Yes, it's a time to remember the real swell vacation we had. And Lois and I certainly want to thank Pat and Jack Raya for getting it started off on the right foot. And our shipmate companions Elida and Ernie Butterly, and June and Russell Tyndall. And of course, Betty and Len, who were our traveling companions. We thank each of you. Well, our vacation started on Thursday, September 13th, when we arrived in New York City. We were met by Jack Raya and went to their home in Somers, New York. Boy, this sure doesn't look like New York that I expect. What a beautiful area and a beautiful home they have. And Jack and Pat have two children. As you can see, both go to school. Well, let's get ready for the day's activities.
Getting ready to go out for the day, huh?
Yes, sir.
There's the big man.
Let's go. We're lucky. We're lucky. Look at George.
You're on George's camera, huh?
Yes. Hello. Good morning.
Hello.
Thanks for your hospitality.
You're welcome, George.
Well, we were off to West Point, which is located on the banks of the Hudson River. And our first stop on a tour was the Cadets Chapel.
Church pipe has over 18,000 speaking pipes. The smallest is about the size of a It will be the first of many organ recitals here on Sunday afternoon at 3:30, and always free and open to the public. If you're ever in the area, just check to see if there will be a recital that Sunday. The other special thing about the chapel are the stained glass windows. In the early 1900s, when the chapel was being designed and built, there was a contest as to who in 1910. Some classes opted to give the window in their class's name and the one 100 years previous to theirs. Now on the side wall over here is a blueprint of all the windows telling you who is depicted in each window and which lays the Mexican door. Now, because somebody is
Well, you probably heard our tour guide tell us that since there was a lady practicing the organ, that the rules were that we shouldn't be around the organ console, and that just stands to reason. So we walked around the chapel and enjoyed the outstanding stained glass windows. And we had a good view of the pipes, and as she said, it's the largest church pipe organ in the world. The Cadet Chapel was built in 1910. By the way, that's a view of the console. And is a superb example of the military Gothic architecture. Now this is out in front of the Cadet Chapel, looking over the other buildings, and I think you can see there it says Beat Navy, and there's another one on the top of that roof. And then we went down to the Hudson River and viewed the battle monument, and our tour guide then told us about a massive iron chain that was thrown across the sharply angled Hudson River from West Point to Constitution Island. It was in the Revolutionary War. So let's listen to her.
During the Revolutionary War, West Point had strategic importance because of its position on the river. Normally the Hudson River flows north to south, and here West Point has to go from west to east. And there's some treacherous currents right around the point area that ships during that time had to slow down drastically to get around the point safely. So the Americans knew that if the British were to gain control of West Point, they would then gain control of the traffic coming up and down the Hudson River. That would have cut the New England colonies off from the Mid-Atlantic colonies, and we would have very realistically, we could have lost the Revolutionary War. So they came up with this idea to put a chain across the river. Now this was not the only place they put a chain. There were some further south in the Stony Point area and some further north, but this seems to be the most famous. It originally weighed 150 tons. They floated across the river on rafts in the spring of 1778. They left it there all spring, summer, into the fall, then brought it back. They did this 5 years in a row that they put it out and brought it back. Now, it was never actually tested. The British knew it was here. They never tried to push their way through it, and the Americans didn't know if it would even hold the weight of a ship because they didn't have any type of a test market for chains. So, but it did its job because West Point was never captured by the British, and we didn't lose the Revolutionary War. History. The black ones behind you, those are Spanish-American War and Civil War, and these green ones over here are Mexican War and Civil War. Now, if you look at the flagpole, the top part of the mast, the top part of the flagpole is one of the masts from the battleship Maine. There were 3 masts on the Maine. One is here, one is at the Naval Academy, and one is in Arlington Cemetery.
From here, we toured more of the grounds. Then we went to the Military Museum. And one of the things we seen there was a portrait of the first woman cadet that graduated. From there, we went to a beautiful church to see some stained glass windows.
One was designed by Marc Chagall and the other one by Matisse. I guess we're inside those. There's something to tell us which is which. See the clock up in the bell tower?
We were told that all the stained glass windows in the church were commissioned by members of the Rockefeller family. This is the window in the narthex end of the church. It was created by Marc Chagall and takes as its theme the Good Samaritan. There are also 4 windows on each side of the church fashioned by Chagall. Each represents an Old Testament prophet, with the exception of one entitled The Crucifixion, which is this one. Seek and ye shall find. Now, Chagall's technique with stained glass windows included the complex treatment of the glass to ensure proper gradations of color. When treated with acid, the color could be partially removed, permitting the glass to shade from one level of intensity to another. Chagall then painted directly on the mounted glass or etched lines into the surface to achieve the final result. Now, the Matisse window was a rose window which was in the front of the church over the altar, and I don't have a picture of that. This is Chagall's main window at the end of the church. The next day, the Ryas took us to the seaport town of Mystic, Connecticut. There we spent a delightful day wandering through Connecticut's historic Seaport Museum. The museum's exhibits cover 17 acres fronting on Connecticut's Mystic River, which is about 10 miles east of New London. We strolled the Seaport's stone-paved lanes and visited reconstructed 19th century homes, stores, and artisan shops, each filled with authentic furnishings and wares. Betty and Len even took a number of pictures of the early 1900 items, including this one.
It's REC now. Okay, then you've got it. You've been recording.
Oh.
Probably got our feet good.
Yeah.
In line with America's seafaring history was this extensive display of colorful wooden carved figureheads that once were proudly displayed on the bows of sailing ships. We then wandered the dock areas and went aboard the Charles Morgan, which was the last of America's wooden whaling ships.
The Regent Star.
This is a Regent Star. I'm going to get down and check our quarters.
I'm sure glad you got a good deal for us.
Yeah, what's the headroom?
The Seaport's exhibit buildings are a mix of local structures and others brought intact or in pieces by barge or truck from various New England ports. The second ship we went on was this one, and it's the Joseph Conrad, which was an 1882 training ship. So, why don't we go on aboard?
Hey, right there.
Oh, it's right here.
No, the front one's right there. Yeah, so how do you sit down?
Okay.
You don't sit up here?
Tell us what you're doing.
I think you guys need a technical director.
Yeah. I think I need a picture taken.
The helmsman would stand like this. You got it.
You got it, yeah.
Look that way and also see his compass here. Okay?
Compass? Yeah.
That shows the rudder. Yeah, that shows the rudder. Exactly.
Well, as you heard, each ship had an excellent interpreter on it that could answer your questions. Now we're looking back at the first ship we were on. That's the whaling ship, in service some 80 years. We learned a number of interesting things about it. And one Jack will tell about, and that's the green water line. So listen to Jack here.
Green color on the waterline of that ship is not paint, it's copper. So there's a copper sheathing around the hull at that point. Because we were asking, it's copper. Hi.
Where's the light of your life? Over there. There's the lighthouse. Does this look like at home on the water?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
We're ready to go sailing, George. Lois, you want to go? I'm afraid we might have a motor coming up.
It's recording.
I see it. I can see the red
Okay.
You're doing good, brother.
All right.
Now, are you holding it steady?
Yeah. I'm going to take it up the lighthouse.
Okay.
Oh, stay
Up the
there.
lighthouse.
So here we come back down. Come on, Lois, get over there.
All right.
Ah.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
There's a little boat that takes people on tours.
Well, that rousing salute came from the coal-fired steamboat Sabino. She was built in 1908. Now let's go over and see what the kids used to do in the 1900s. There's a couple of kids.
I haven't got my arches on. Don't too fast.
Look at him go!
Okay, Jack. Jack, would you mind doing it again and wave at me?
Come on, George.
Look at that.
George, the other way.
The other way.
Oh, it's behind.
Oh, behind?
No, here. Yeah.
Like that? All right. How about that, Jack?
Fantastic.
Well, the last exhibit we visited was this wood carving shop. And from there, we headed back to the Rayas, and we had another enjoyable evening with Pat and Jack. And they, of course, as I said previously, live in Somers, New York, which is about some 50 miles from New York City.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's always...
And it's Sunday morning, and
we didn't go to church.
that's right. But we'll make up for it.
Breakfast.
Yeah, and what a great time with you guys. And
Oh, we had a
do
delightful time.
appreciate it all.
When do we
You'll
get
notice
2 or
it's a
3
little bit
days to do
colder.
nothing, right?
And it sure went off with a bang here at the end. Pop, pop.
Yeah, well, somebody likes to target practice in our woods, so that's
Well,
okay.
the next
Get a good
week,
picture of our woods?
yes. And then the next time we see you will be on the ship. Bye-bye.
Well, here we are at the passenger ship terminal in New York City. And this is the first glimpse of the ship that will be going on, the Regent Star. Now, unfortunately, they wouldn't allow visitors aboard the ship, but Pat and Jack, being very resourceful, found a way to see us off.
Yeah, all right. There's no water in it. I don't
Drain it. They usually drain it when they're in. There's a net over it now.
Well, you won't have to jump too far then.
Well, with that warm send-off, we're ready for our cruise. Now, the itinerary was that we'd leave New York City, and our first stop would be at Newport, Rhode Island. From there, we'd go through the Cape Cod Canal to Bar Harbor, Maine, on to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and then around and down the St. Lawrence, going up the Saguenay Fjord, and then stopping at Quebec City and ending in Montreal. And now let's give you the highlights of that trip, starting in New York on Sunday, September 16th. And as you recall, our very good friend seen us off, and then guess the first thing we did. We headed for, you know what, the Chow Hall.
You can tell good eaters. Yes. You can usually tell good eaters from the back, as well as the front.
Well, with full stomachs, the ship departed the dock. Now this is a view of the aircraft carrier USS Intrepid. It's now a museum. And I was on it for a short period of time during World War II. Now, unfortunately, there was some organized confusion in the ship's dining service, and we had to stand in line for about 2 hours to see the maitre d' relative to the dining room table assignment. From there, we went up on the deck, and we stood at the rail and viewed the Manhattan skyline. There's the Empire State Building. And this is a view looking aft on the ship. Well, now let's just listen to the sights and see the sounds as we depart the harbor. Well, that was certainly quite an exchange of salutations. Well, this is a Royal Caribbean ship that was docked next to us, heading for destinations unknown. There's a view of the lower Manhattan skyline. two tall buildings are, of course, the Trade Center buildings. This is a view of the ferry building, an old structure. And that's the silhouette of Ellis Island, which played such an important part of our history. It had been open just for a short period of time, and as you can see, there are many visitors there on that day, seeing where the immigrants were first processed when they arrived here in the U.S. Well, there's a fisherman close to our ship, and as we know, fishermen will fish anywhere. Now let's listen to this buoy. Well, there's our ship's captain. There's a pilot with him from New York Port Authority who's there to help navigate us out of Upper New York Bay. Well, there's certainly a lady who needs no introduction. She's one who we love, particularly for what she stands for. This is our last look at Manhattan's Lower New York Bay. And now we're on to our first port of call, Newport, Rhode Island. This is one of the tenders that takes us from the Regent Star to the shore. This day will be spent in sightseeing. So let's go aboard our tour bus, shall we?
To give you a few brief things about Newport before we get started. One time Newport in the 1700s was the fifth largest city in the country, along with Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Charleston. Over in Bermuda, the difference here is that it's still in the center of the church. There's a sounding board up over that is so outstanding that they don't need any amplification. When you're talking from the pulpit, you can be heard all over the church. Here.
From our tour of the city and harbor, we drove out along the water and viewed many of the palatial cottages. This happens to be one of them. It's named Hammersmith Farm, and it is where Jackie Kennedy grew up, and in fact she and John F. had their wedding reception there. We then went out to the breakers for a guided tour. This is a 70-room cottage overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, and is one of the most opulent of Newport's Preservation Society buildings. Cornelius Vanderbilt II had it built in 1895. Now this is the Great Hall. It rises over 45 feet through 2 floors. The designer was Richard Norris Hunt, and he was inspired by the Renaissance palaces of northern Italy. As you can see, there's much marble, bronze, alabaster, and gold. Now this is the library, and it's paneled with walnuts stamped in gold. This Louis XVI style bedroom was Mrs. Vanderbilt's. Now this is the morning room. There were fresh flowers on the table, and there was fresh flowers in every room. Now this is the dining room. The table would, when extended, seat 34. That crystal chandelier is 12 feet in length. And this formal dining room is a 2-story space with an area of over 2,400 square feet. Now this is looking out to the water, and lots of beautiful inlaid mosaic tiles. This is the garden area. And we were told that unlike his colorful grandfather, Cornelius Vanderbilt II had a reputation for gentleness, fairness, and piety. And he gave a lot to the church and to charities. Now this is the children's house. playhouse, if you can believe it. What beautiful grounds. It was a lovely day. And after our 2.5-hour tour, we took a tender back to our ship, the Regent Star. Well, here's my brother trying to convince Lois and I that the room that he booked us here at the water level was the best in the house. Now here's the crew heading for you-know-where. Lunch, of course. And then after lunch, we went up on the boat deck for a lifeboat drill. We are now on our way to Bar Harbor, Maine. And to get there, we would cross through the Cape Cod Canal. Now, there are 2 stationary highway bridges that cross over the canal. This is the entrance into the canal. The canal was built by the federal government. It's still owned by them. And it eliminates the longer trip around Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. It's a free waterway and extensively used by all kinds of craft. It's about 15 miles in length and has those 2 stationary highway bridges, as you'll see, and 1 unique railroad lift bridge, which is this one right here. It's up so that we can traverse under it. At a slow speed of about 9 knots, we transited the canal in about 2 hours. Now, as you'll see ahead, the people along the shores are extremely friendly. Those in the houses would wave at you, and people would give you salutations. On our ship was a computer class, and several people made a computer printout that said hello to the people on shore. And some people on shore made one that said hello back again. It seems they had some friends on shore. Now let's enjoy the sights and sounds of cruising the canal. See you at the other end.
I'm amazed at how many people come up. At one point over on the other side, there's a place where cars, I can't tell what he's yelling to you. Super. somebody going to come on?
Come on, me!
Signal, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, we certainly hope you enjoyed the canal crossing. This is a view looking south as we come out of the canal. That's a view looking north. And that, of course, is the Atlantic Ocean. Well, it was kind of windy. And Len went on to his cabin, and Betty wanted to go take a look in the window and see Len. So let's see what she's up to.
That's not the window.
That's not the window.
Where is Len?
I saw somebody else. There were too many there.
Are you going to be a peeping Tom?
There were too many there.
She said you could leave the curtain open. You don't have to worry about people peeking in.
They're already in there. That's why.
I don't know. I think I'm going to go in.
Okay, there's the windows going into our cabin, and that goes into our shower.
Oh, what a beautiful sunset. There they are, enjoying the sunsets. It's a great day and a great evening. It's September 17th and my brother's birthday, so let's go enjoy the party.
Yeah, about 30, I think.
I think it's, yeah, he looks.
He doesn't look very young.
That's
yeah. Sounds like with song or without song? With a song.
with a song. With a song, yes.
I'm not very good singer, yeah.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Yay! How easy.
Hit him with it.
But now you're not allowed to sing. I didn't sing.
Allowed to sing? Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Can I have your name? Leonard. Where? Len. Okay, happy birthday, Len. Everybody. 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Leonard. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. The whole 49 of them. Who's a better singer? This guy, right?
Story of the radio station. Another radio station story. She went in the disco, you know. Then, you know, they coming back home. That is the mother. That is the father. That is the Susie, right? Right. Mother coming from the disco, going to the toilet, coming back. The father coming from the disco, going in the toilet, and back to sleep. Susie, of course, went in the toilet. She's screaming. You see, Mama, she said, only pee-pee. Oh, little Susie. Oh, big girl. You know what you have to do. She said, Mommy, but I can't. You need to help me. No, I want to sleep. I'm tired. Well, all right, Mom.
Well, it's Tuesday morning, and here we are in Bar Harbor, Maine. Now, Bar Harbor lies at the entrance to Acadia National Park on Mount Desert Island. Certainly the beauty of sea, mountain, lake, and forest have made this region world famous as a summer resort. Now, since our ship ties up in the harbor, its tenders take us ashore. Now, just a few facts about the Regent Star. Its registry is the Bahamas. It has a gross tonnage of 24.5 tons. Its length is 642 feet, width 79 feet, a cruising speed of 19 knots, and its passenger capacity is 950, although there are just about 850 aboard for our cruise. Now back to Bar Harbor. We were told that in the 1900s it was the summer playground for America's wealthy, such as the J.P. Morgans and Rockefellers. But that the Depression of the 1930s made it such that many of them abandoned their homes, and then a fire swept through Bar Harbor in '47, ravaging most of the estates and leaving 23 million in charred ruins. Now this is on Cadillac Mountain, which is the highest point on the U.S. eastern seaboard. And it is basically composed of granite, very pretty rugged stone with kind of a green algae on it, very pretty. Boy, was it cold up there that day. From there, we went to the Wild Gardens of Acadia. And there was a combination shop and museum that had some very interesting artifacts. But the main feature of this park was its native plants. Quite interesting. This is the tour bus we were using, and my brother, always watching out for our interests, had to, you know what, check the tires. From there, we drove down to what's called Thunder Hole, an area where there's some beautiful rocks, and it is said that at certain times the ocean swells rush into a narrow slot, creating a monstrous booming sound. Well, it wasn't doing it that day, but let me tell you, that's a beautiful area, and the coastline is so gorgeous. From there, we went to Bar Harbor in the shopping area and sharpened up our credit cards and made a few purchases. And then it was back to the ship. And the first thing we did was to look at the photographs that the ship photographer had taken on various occasions. This is where they were displayed. And then it was up on deck to watch our departure out of Bar Harbor. It's about 3 in the afternoon now. Now this is the pilot's ship coming to pick the pilot up who got on at Bar Harbor. And he was up here in the bridge assisting our captain in navigating out of the Bar Harbor area. By the way, that bridge is 65 feet above the water. So let us now watch and listen to the sounds as we leave.
There he goes. Tell it's not all that warm out here on deck, because see the gals are over there getting a little warmed up by the wall.
Well, here we are, exiting Bar Harbor and on our way to Halifax, Nova Scotia. It's Tuesday evening, beautiful sunset, and on tonight's agenda is the captain's cocktail party and dance. So let's go. First, let's stop by the slots. And there's the captain. He cordially shakes hands with everybody. So let's enjoy.
My crew and myself, I take this opportunity to welcome all of you on board the Regent Star. It is a great pleasure for me to have you with us. I hope you enjoy this cruise and you have good memories from the places that you will visit and from the ship to take back home with you. Once again, welcome aboard and thank you very much. Thank you.
Cocktail party, it was off to dinner. So let's go.
Oh, the name's Rustin. We're from New Jersey. My wife, June. There you go.
Hi, June.
Hi.
Here's
Annie and
New Jersey. And Betty, how are you? And there's Lynn, the birthday boy. And here's Lois. And look at the way they folded the napkins.
Get your wife in here.
There you go.
On a business trip, very suddenly, they threw some things away, and they got to the hotel, and his wife said, "Oh dear, I forgot a few things." He said, "What do you want?" "Oh," she says, "I want 2 shirts, 4 handkerchiefs, and a brassiere." "Fine," he says, "we'll get them for you." So he goes down there and meets his old friend Leonard, you know, and calls for a drink. A few drinks. He finally wanders back to the hotel room in the middle of the night. In the dim light, his wife says, "Did you give me those things I ordered?" And he, oh yeah, he says, "I got them." She says, "Where are they?" Well, he says, "Fixed up. There's the tail of one shirt. There's the tail of the other shirt." "What about the handkerchief?" "Oh," he says, "I got the handkerchief. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Oh," she says, "did you get the brassiere?" "Oh
little time there. There was a Christmas shop, and all picked up an ornament. We went in there, and they had handmade sweaters. They're from Korea, so the prices were reasonable. Very nice.
We went in.
Well, after dinner, you can imagine what we did. We went to a show and then on to this midnight buffet. Very beautiful buffet with, we were told, 200 to 300 carvings of fruit. Awfully good eating, let me tell you. Everything imaginable there. And so nicely presented, from ice carvings to fruit carvings. There's a watermelon. And there's a chef. And then the next morning, we arrived in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Now, Halifax is the capital of Nova Scotia and was one of the first English settlements in Canada. It was founded in 1749 by Edward Cornwallis. It is a superb harbor, as you can see. There weren't too many people out when I took these videotapes. That's the captain and the pilot who was aboard to help us to get into Halifax. Now as we approach, let me show you and listen to what was going on there for our arrival.
Bit and a bell back there.
With that as a welcome to Halifax, we boarded a bus to take a 3.5-hour tour. So, why don't you come along with us? Here we go.
And then we'll come back, hopefully the length of Barrington Street, sort of along the water. You'll get a good overview of the city this way. easternmost province, if you're not counting Newfoundland up north and east. We're about 115,000 people on the peninsula itself, but metro area is 380,000. In a province of 880,000, so if you're quick with these, you'll have an idea of the proportion of our population to the size of the province.
After a pleasant drive southwest of Halifax, we arrived at Peggy's Cove. Peggy's Cove is one of several fishing villages built around the snug harbors of the craggy south coast. As you can see, there are some massive outcroppings of granite. An old lighthouse standing on a massive granite ledge and fishing boats moored along weather-worn wharves are a part of the atmosphere that makes this cove well known among artists and photographers. It's located about 30 to 40 miles from Halifax. And there's a marine studio there, which is built about 1875 as a fish shed, and it displays works by local artists. You'll notice here the rocks that are used to shore up this dock footing. This is a monument to fishermen. It's been sculptured out of granite and shows the fishermen in many of their natural poses. What do you think of Peggy's Cove?
Great, really enjoying it.
Well, here were some kids' doll houses that we spotted alongside of a house. The population here, by the way, is about 100. And there are some really nice gift stores, little shops. And I gotta admit, we helped the economy a little here. Well, it was quite a delightful place, but I guess it's time to go back to the ship, and we'll head to the promenade deck and to our room, number 51. So, why don't you come on in and let's take a look at our room, shall we? Portholes. That door right there goes into the bathroom. There's the closet area.
Well, I've got some nice ones here.
We have some visitors.
Oh,
hello there. Welcome.
Hi.
This is this is the
very lovely.
Yes, very lovely.
So neat, even fruit on the
yes.
Got from the foliage, Mike.
And by the way, these are the ones our tour arrangers. And they did a nice job.
Did you show them the
window? I didn't have the nerve to show them the porthole we have in the John.
In the shower.
In the shower. Look at this. Oh, look at that. I see it. I see it. Well, all I can say is that it was certainly exciting to be able to take a shower and to wave at the people jogging past our window. Now, we're still in Halifax, and across from our ship, tied up at the pier next over, is Bermuda Star's Queen of Bermuda, which is also on one of the fall foliage tours. Well, let's go downstairs and enjoy some of the entertainment.
afternoon to get a little bit of information on the history of the bagpipes. You'll hear some music as well, and we'll give you a lot of the background on why you hear bagpipes in Nova Scotia. Did a lot of you take tours today? Yes. Do you know what Nova Scotia means? Yes. The fact is, there is more Scottish heritage here in Nova Scotia that still resides in Scotland. So there are a lot of people with a strong Scottish flair, and that's why you see bagpipes here today. Did anyone see us down on the pier? The hour is approaching 4 p.m. and we'll be departing Halifax for Quebec City. As you can see, the gangplank is being taken away. Now, the distance between Halifax and Quebec City is about 900 miles. There's our captain and pilot. Before reaching Quebec City, we will be cruising the Saguenay Fjord. Well, there goes the lines. And these workers here apparently were here just for getting our ship off. So as they leave the area, so do we.
About 5'6" high.
That's the container area. Was quite an exchange of toots between the Bermuda Queen and our ship, the Regent Star. Now as we leave Halifax, it's Wednesday, and Thursday we'll be at sea, Friday again at sea, and we'll, as I said, be cruising the Saguenay Fjord, and we'll arrive at Quebec City on Saturday. So we'll have some time to spend here at sea and enjoy all of the amenities of the ship. Take a look at this container ship. Boy, is it loaded. Well, let's enjoy what's going on in the ship now, shall we? Where are you off to now?
Out to sea.
Out to sea, huh?
2 days of rest and recuperation.
Okay.
All of our travels.
Then we go on to Quebec.
And Montreal.
Right on, okay.
This is a rough life.
Yes, it is, but somebody has to do it.
Somebody's got to do it.
Right, okay, we'll see you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye. How is it in there? Wonderful.
You have any soda?
Yeah.
How warm is it? Pretty nice. But this isn't too hot today. Yesterday it was real hot.
You're the lame brain. Yeah, this is our...
John.
Yeah, okay, John. Hi, Al. And that's Betty.
Hi, Kitty.
Kitty.
Hi, Dixie.
Hi, Dixie. Hi, Mike. Hi. I think I know you. You're my brother. That's right. And who are you? Yeah, you're the one I go to the same room with. Right there. And how are we doing today?
Not too good. We're the lame brains. Capital Al.
What comes on the screen immediately after the locomotive at the start of an old Superman TV episode? A tall building.
Well, that was our team playing Trivial Pursuit. Oh, we had a great time trying to get wooden nickels that way. By the way, this is more photographs by the ship's photographer. And now it's about 6 o'clock, and we were out on deck watching the sunset. When you see something like this, you just know that God is at work in His heaven. Well, now it's Thursday morning, and we're out on the fantail watching the skeet shooting. Judging by the number of misses, these gentlemen weren't all that good at skeet shooting, and a lot of these orange pucks ended up in the bottom of the ocean. Well, now down to the gymnasium and pool. This is on one of the lower decks. And there she is. Lois, I think you've had too many midnight buffets. And now to bingo.
B number 7. B7. 071. 071. G53.
Well, more ship's photos. Brother Len, Lois, me, Russell, June, Ernie, and Elida. And there we all were, sitting at the table. And now Len and I bought an interest in a horse for a race that would be held. And this guy was really a character. So let's listen to him try to sell it to us.
Chuck needs to take another, it pays a little more if you bet a little more, Chuck.
The more money we earn, the more money you get
It
back.
pays about 4 to 1.
Listen, you own the Schwinn Bicycle Factory, less a D, so come on, you can afford another.
And now for a demonstration of how our Filipino chefs carved various types of fruit.
Rooster. I think it's another word, but my English is not good enough to say that. Anyway, this is a piggy rooster, and you can pass around this if you have any pig for tonight. And I told you before, it was kind of red flour. So to that, they have to work for decoration. Okay, I was tell you what's going on in the kitchen. Looks like a pigeon, right? I think it is. It's made by... It's really gorgeous.
Well, seeing all this fine carvings and food kind of makes you hungry, doesn't it? Since it's 4 p.m., let's go to tea time. And let me tell you, tea is more than tea time. Look at Lois's plate. You've never... Oh. Okay, this is a nail that I'm buying for Lois. She doesn't know yet, but it's a cutie. She seemed to like it.
Hey, you seen one, you seen them both. How's it feel going around pointing at people all day long? What is the last name? Reed.
This was an adult scavenger hunt that I'm certainly glad that Len and I didn't get in on. And then from here, it's up on deck to view the Anticosti Island. Now that island guards the mouth of the St. Lawrence River and is renowned as a hunting and fishing paradise. From there, it was to a cocktail party, then to dinner, and then on to this midnight buffet down at the Lido Cafe, which was outstanding.
That's the one who takes care of us.
Here we stopped by the disco. Well, it's now the next day, and we look at more photos, and by gosh, a little more food, and let's take a dance lesson, shall we?
The rumba and samba. Come on up.
Well, now it was time for horse racing, and the horse that we bought into was number 4. And the caretaker of that horse is the one who just shook his arms and waved at us. And he was from Lakewood. So let's enjoy the horse racing, shall we?
Please, $5. Please, horse number 1, 2, and 5. Horse number 1, 3, and 6. 1 pays 8, 2 pays 11, 3 pays 15, 4 pays 4, 5 pays 6, and 6 pays 9. And number 2 moving up 1 spade. Is the race over? We have 2 and a double for number 4. It's like the Academy Awards down there. It wasn't the Kentucky Derby, you know. Very good. Now everybody who bought a share in horse 4, you make a single file right here by the stairs. Don't come up on the stage.
Well, for your information, the 2 $5 shares in horse number 4 that Len and I bought each yielded us $10 per share. Not bad. Now it's time to cruise the Saguenay Fjord. Now, the Saguenay River is an important waterway in the Canadian province of Quebec. But unfortunately, as rivers are these days, many of them are pollutant, and it appears to have some pollution. This is where it emptied into the St. Lawrence. Now, we were told that the Saguenay begins as a series of rapids tumbling out of a lake. Then the river passes through the sheer 1,600-foot cliffs. And that's what, of course, we were headed up to see. And then it finally empties into a section of the St. Lawrence where 10 species of whales feed.
And we heard some rumors that one or two people seen a whale out there in that area. Now there's a statue of Mary on one of these cliffs. And there's a ritual that ships do as they go through this area. So let's see and hear it.
Yeah, you might be able to access it.
After seeing the statue, we made a 180-degree turn in the river and headed back to the St. Lawrence, where we would head up to Quebec City. Now, Quebec is the only walled city in North America. And it's now Saturday morning, and it's about 8 a.m., and we're getting ready for an all-day tour of the city as well as the countryside. So, let's get on our tour bus and see what's happening.
At that time, ships were built with wood, and guess what we have in abundant supply around here? Of course, it's wood. And then because they started inventing ships with metal hulls, that business completely went fat in Quebec City and led to a practically 90-year-long depression in this area. So then we jumped forward to 1984 when they were celebrating the 350th anniversary of the foundation of the city of Quebec. They decided to redo all this old port area here. This old port really for 90 years had lain unused and derelict and so on and so forth. But as part of the 350th celebrations of the anniversary of the founding of the village of Quebec, they decided to have this great big thing with the sailing ships, the sort of armada of sailing ships coming all the way up. It was very pretty in 1984 it was, but of course they had to somewhat revamp the old port as a result, so everybody got nuts and made sort of up-to-stick.
Our first stop was at the provincial parliament building, and this is the flag of this province. Beautiful grounds. It's done in the Renaissance style. From there, we drove through the city.
You find as you go further west out towards Quebec City, the more modern it gets. Actually, the Plains of Abraham, what we now call the Plains of Abraham, where we're going in a second, is on the left over there. But at one time, the Plains of Abraham extended right the way across the plateau. That's not Saint Louis, that's right. Or do you put that gate in Saint Louis? Oh well. In the with the ships, you see, so they naturally lived where the water was down in the lower old town. There were very few private houses.
We stopped here in the upper section of the city, and the tallest landmark is this famous Chateau Frontenac, a beautiful hotel, and it overlooks the port of Quebec. Now, the Chateau Frontenac was built in 1893 in the medieval French style. And we understand that it was twice the meeting place for Churchill and Roosevelt and leaders of other Allied nations during World War II. From there, we visited several of the churches in the area. And we were impressed by the beauty of their windows and the awesome beauty of their interiors. Now, this is one of the real old churches. It was built in 1688 and was restored after being destroyed by fire during the Siege of Quebec. Now, in the square just adjacent to where this church was a little underground winery, and it had some restored wine vaults. Now, this is a view looking from the old town up to the Hotel Frontenac. From here we went out into the countryside, and this is Montmorency Falls, which is said to be even higher than Niagara Falls. There's a hotel up there that overlooks this falls. And from here we went to lunch at a quaint place. See, the trees are turning. Not quite all in color yet, but it's beautiful. Now, after lunch, we visited Saint-Anne-de-Beaupré. It is on the north shore of the St. Lawrence River and is a world-famous shrine that attracts more than 1 million pilgrims and visitors annually. We were told that soon after the first chapel was built here in 1658, miraculous cures were reported by those who had visited this shrine. Now, beneath this sanctuary is a smaller chapel. There it is. Now we're back in the main sanctuary, and you'll notice a lady going forward on her knees.
In front of the sanctuary are crutches and other devices hanging to attest to their cure from those who had prayed for their healing. There's more of the crutches there. Outside the church are a number of other shrines and chapels. Of particular meaning to me were these life-size bronze figures depicting the stations of the Way of the Cross. There are 14 of them, and they take Jesus from being condemned to death until he is laid in the tomb. And from there, we visited an interesting woodcarver's boutique. And they told us some stories of French-Canadian legends. And the person who was telling the stories was just hilarious. Now from there, we went back to the ship. Well, I think we should do some listening and eating now, so here we are.
There's the man.
Well, now we're out on the deck, and we're just about ready to leave. The gangplank's going up, and we see Ernie here ahead. So let's see what Ernie's doing.
All ready to leave? Ready to roll. Let him go. I fun a frolic and no fooling around.
Well, with that send-off from Ernie and the crew decked out in yellow jackets because it had just started to rain, we were ready to leave the port. What a beautiful city, even in the rain. There's some well-wishers. Not many of them down there, but a few. As you can see, it was just 6 o'clock, and that was the time we were to depart Quebec City. Well, the tug was really pulling, and unfortunately it wouldn't get us going. Even with the help of my brother there, it wouldn't get us going. They'd pull the stern off, and then the bow wouldn't come out. So the captain was a little frustrated, and they ended up getting another tug at the bow of the ship, and they finally got us underway. So with that in mind, let's go downstairs and watch the entertainment, shall we?
Two-thirds of the ship has a cold, but yeah, I went to the doctor. I went over to the hospital there to the emergency room, and while I was sitting there waiting to see the doctor get something that's cold, there are 3 guys standing in there. They're pacing back and forth and pacing back and forth, and the nurse comes out finally, and she looks at the one guy and she says, "Mr. Johnson, congratulations, your wife just had twins." He goes, "Wow, what an omen. I work for Doubleman." He runs out the door. So I'm still waiting and waiting. The nurse comes back in about 10 minutes. She says, Mr. Morgan, congratulations, your wife just had triplets. He goes, what an honor, I work for 3M, and goes running out the door. Well, about this time, the third guy jumps up, gathers all the stuff, starts running away, and the nurse says, wait a minute, sir, where are you going? Because I'm getting the heck out of here. I work for 7-Eleven. Well, anyway, I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of old stale jokes, okay? Instead, I'm going to have some of your fellow passengers come out here and do that. Are you ready? Okay, now, let me tell you now.
You're always on the go. You never take a minute off. Too busy making dough. Someday you say you'll have your fun when you're a millionaire. Imagine all the fun you'll have in your old rocking chair. Enjoy yourself. It's later than you think. Enjoy yourself while you're still in the pink. The years go by as quickly as a wink. Enjoy yourself, enjoy yourself. It's later than you think. Your light of light, your love of love, your ravishing brunette has left you now and has become somebody else's pet. Lay down that gun, don't try, my friend, to reach the great beyond. You'll have more fun by reaching for a redhead or a blonde. Yourself. It's later than you think. Enjoy yourself while you're still in the pink. The years go by as quickly as a wink. Enjoy yourself, enjoy yourself. It's later than you think.
Baby didn't get his way. It really shocks his little sister. He didn't get to go and play. Baby has to do his bowling. Baby has his golf to play. Baby has to do his own things. No one else can have a say. As I know, there's never been another woman, but that's because he doesn't have any time left over. And I don't necessarily like him, but I love him very, very much, if that helps tonight. And then I would like to have him come up here for a minute. How glad the many millions of Toms or Dicks or Williams would be to capture me. But you were my resistance, you were my resistance. I fell, and it was swell.
Many years ago, my father came to this country from Austria. And Austria, as you may know, has some of the finest yodeling in the world. Swiss yodeling is beautiful. That's what Swiss yodeling does. But Austrian yodeling is more intricate. And as a little boy, about 75 years ago, my father settled in the lovely hills of Killingworth, Connecticut. And in the evening, on the way home from the town, about 6 miles away, before the days of automobiles were very prominent in this country, there was only one other car in the town of Killingworth, that's the town I am speaking of. Oh, where is my little dog gone? Oh, where can it be? When she's cut long and his tail cut short. Oh, where can he be?
joke contest coming up, and then we've got our super finale show coming your way tonight. And as Dan mentioned early on, or last night, you're not going to believe the finale. Believe me, you'll really enjoy it. It's a surprise, so I won't ruin it by saying anything more. But before we go, how about a super round of applause for three fine gentlemen, Mr. Gwillem Lewis on the 88, Mr. Larry Turner on the violin, and my twin brother.
Well, it's Saturday night, and tomorrow we'll be docking in Montreal. This is our last night on the ship, and it's time for our farewell dinner.
This is the last night.
Yep, gonna live it up.
Live it up. Yes, he helps us every night.
Good job.
Good job.
Very good.
There we go. There's Ernie.
I want you to save for the watch of it.
Like the last one.
I enjoyed having it. And all that lovely wine you had. They drank lots of wine. Oh, well, thank you. Well, I hope you have a safe trip home.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Well, at the conclusion of our dinner, the lights were turned off, and each of the waiters came in with flaming baked Alaska for our final dessert. By the way, all the basic chefs on this cruise were French. Good food.
Anniversary, whatever. Tonight we'll make all the waiters and busboys play a nice, beautiful, lovely spring song all together. All together. I have the pleasure to really announce this gentleman. He's the one who makes all the beautiful calories. Ladies and gentlemen, all the women's going to blame on him. He's our pastry chef, Mr. Daniel from France. Here we go. No recipes from France. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Yves, our head chef de cuisine from France. From 26 nationalities. One language altogether. I'd just like to thank you for choosing Regent City. And I'll see you tomorrow morning. Enjoy the Big Alaska. Breakfast tomorrow morning will be at 4.
Tell you we're proud of Ernie and what he did tonight. He won the gold medal. He's a neat guy. Okay, Ernie?
You're only saying it because it's true.
Okay. Have a good trip.
You too.
All right.
All of us.
Well, it's Sunday morning, and we're here in Montreal. It's a gorgeous day, and the Regent Bar is in its final docking procedures. Well, since we left New York, we have traveled 1,690 nautical miles to reach this destination in Montreal. Now, Betty and Len and Lois and I were getting off here and taking a tour, and then on to Vermont. Our table mates, Ernie and Elida and Russell and June, were getting back on the ship and heading back to New York. This is the bags. They're all ready to go ashore, and so are we. So we got off the ship and took a tour of Montreal and the surrounding areas. Our first stop was here at the Basilica of Notre Dame. Now, it was built in 1829 and is the city's oldest parish. It is among the most magnificent of French-Canadian churches and is one of the largest in North America. There's a number of beautiful stained glass windows that depict religious scenes and the history of the original parish. It is a most spectacular church. Being Sunday morning, there was a mass in process when we visited the church. Our tour then took us through the main part of the city and headed us out to the Olympic Park, which is east of the city. Now, Olympic Park was the site of the 1976 Summer Olympics and is now home to the Montreal's baseball team. The park presents a futuristic architecture with the highest incline tower. Now you'll notice those cables down to the roof, and that is a retractable roof, which is raised for ball games in the summertime. Across the street was a park with beautiful flowers. Then we drove out to St. Joseph's Oratory, which is located on Mount Royal. It is one of the world's largest basilicas and one of Montreal's most important religious shrines. From there, we went to a mountain lookout for a spectacular view of the city. Our bus then took us to the Montreal airport, where we rented a Hertz car, and Betty and Len and Lois and I took about a 2.5-hour drive from Montreal to Burlington, Vermont. It was our intent in Vermont to see the fall foliage as well as many of the attractions. Well, that night we spent in Burlington, got up the next morning, and headed down to the Shelbourne Museum. Now, that consists of about 37 historic structures on 45 acres, and this is one of them. It's a round barn, vintage 1901, and it was relocated from a small town in Vermont, and it had a bunch of New England farm tools and vehicles on display. We then went through a beautiful home that had a number of Rembrandts, and then on to a lighthouse that had originally been on Lake Champlain. So let's go inside and listen to the man tell us about it.
Located about central away to the lake. It was built in 1871, it was moved to the museum in 1952. Actual use was in use about 62 years. And in the 62 years span, there would be 11 different families that lived here. One of them lived here 3 different times. One of them had 7 children that lived here.
From there, we went over and went aboard this ship. It is the last vertical beam sidewheel steamship intact in the U.S. Now, this is a view on the main deck looking aft. And then we went up to the second deck, and it is just a beautiful ship. We understand that it was used to transport passengers between Vermont and New York. It's the vintage of 1906. Take a look at that stateroom. Here's the main engine room. and look at the amenities. Another view of the engine room, and that's the electrical panel, I can tell that. And there's the main piston, a big one. And this is where they prepared the meals. And I wonder if they had a midnight buffet like we enjoyed on the Regent Star. Then we went to other buildings. We were told, by the way, that the museum was founded in '47 by Electra Havmeyer-Webb. She was a pioneer collector of Americana, and she wanted to show the craftsmanship and ingenuity of our forefathers. Now this is the general store, and it was relocated from Shelburne, Vermont. It dates back to 1840. This is the meeting house, relocated from Charlotte, Vermont, again in 1840. And this is from one of the horseshoe barns, they call them. Now these barns were just loaded with carriages, coaches, sleighs, harnesses, and stagecoaches, etc. Now there's an interesting vehicle right there. Little milk wagon. Now let's go inside the horseshoe barn and take a look at some of the wagons. And there's a very interesting interpreter in there who will tell us some things about the wagons and sleighs. So why don't we take a look and see what's going on? Look at that little one.
Of course. One time that particular wagon went from New York to Philadelphia and back to New York again in 19 and a half hours using 78 horses. There. When your door was shut, your step was covered so it stayed clean.
How about that?
They thought it very well, pushing it against the opening and maintaining the light source at the same point. This, of course, was a public conveyance. The step, of course, could be used to get out of the carriage when you were arrived at your destination, and it folded in the air out of the way and was kept clean while you were traveling. Of course, using this carriage, you had not only a driver, but you also had a groom. And his job, of course, when you got to where you were going, was to step down here quickly and open the door and put the steps down for you. This top also folded down, and this ear became the fender for the back wheel.
Pretty fancy, huh?
This was made in Paris in 1890. That's why I work here, of course, because it is educational.
I don't know, but
We'll get her.
Find out. We'll leave her there for a few years.
How are you, Law?
Very comfortable.
We'll see you when we get home. Yeah, we got you good. Well, after we got Betty and Lois out of their predicament, we visited this stone cottage, which was a modest farm home of the mid-1800s. From there, we went over to this toy shop, and we were told that this carving was done by a blind person. Utterly fantastic. The toy shop and a unit next door to it housed early transportation toys, mechanical toys, penny banks, dolls, animals, pewter, clocks, and a fantastic collection of doll houses. Look at these old windows. This was in the toy shop itself. Now, it was said that the Shelburne Museum grew out of Mrs. Webb's lifetime of collecting. She was the daughter of a wealthy sugar king, who he and his wife were collectors, but of old master paintings. So it was said that Mrs. Webb inherited her parents' collecting urge, although her independent nature led her in a very different aesthetic directions.
We were told that her mother was completely shocked when she, at age 18, brought home her first cigar store Indian. Look at the dollhouse interiors. Such detail. Well, now we went over to visit a one-room schoolhouse. Let's go in. School?
Was built in 1830 and they taught it until 1885. And then it sat idle by the roadside and was thoroughly vandalized. So the contents came from other old schools around the state of Vermont. It's the first building to be brought in onto the grounds.
Well, there's a dunce hat. And now there's a picture of 3 presidents. And you see each of them as you walk by it. Now from there we went over to Stagecoach Inn. And it had a great collection of cigar store figures. However, it didn't have the original cigar store figure that Mrs. Webb purchased. We were told that her son has it in his house. And it had a number of folk sculptures, such as this one. And a tremendous collection of weather vanes and whirligigs. And as you can see, I was really fascinated by those. Now, we were told that Mrs. Webb died in 1960, and the museum then passed on to her son as far as the direction was concerned. And today the museum continues to grow and develop. It is a non-profit educational institution and is supported principally by admissions and some merchandise they sell of reproductions of a number of these early artifacts.
That's from a ship called the American Indian. And that's been cleaned up recently. That's why the colors are so bright.
18-foot wingspan.
I haven't measured it, but that's what our guide's book tells us.
Okay. More figureheads, carved eagles. Well, there's another view of the Stagecoach Inn. Look at that hitching post. And then we went over to the covered bridge. It was moved from Cambridge, Vermont. Its vintage is 1845. And it's the only remaining double-lane covered bridge with a footpath in Vermont. And we walked around the grounds over and went through a number of other buildings, including this sawmill. And then we went to the railroad station. It has complete with an engine, and it's 1890 vintage, and it was the railroad station they had right there in Shelburne. It had a neat private car. Let's go in. And this car was what year?
1890.
1890.
Yep.
Dining car. And we went to the circus building, and will you see this model?
By Mr. Edgar Kirk, who was a brakeman on the Pennsylvania Railroad. He started it as a toy for his children, and every summer he would set it up in his backyard for neighborhood children to play with. At that time, it didn't have the audience. When the children grew up and left home, then he started on the audience, and it became a hobby of his. Now, Mr. Kirk had no education, and he worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week until the unions came in. I think he worked 6 days and on an 8-hour shift.
Oh boy, wouldn't our grandkids love this? Well, they also had in this building a number of carousel figures and this 500-foot-long handcrafted model circus parade. Well, from there we went on to the Green Mountains to Stowe, Vermont. And we stayed here at the Golden Eagle, which we certainly could highly recommend. It is quite an establishment. Had all kinds of things to do, but we didn't do them. We headed out down to Waterbury, which is some 6 miles from Stowe, to see how cider is made at the Cold Hollow Cider Mill. Now just take a look at this cider press. As you can see, the apples are ground up and then pumped through a flexible hose onto claws stacked in about 14 layers. This was on the wall that showed you the process of creating apple cider. It was interesting to me that each batch contained about 70 bushels of apples, about 2,800 pounds, and one pressing yielded about 230 gallons. And the tailings from the pressings went to feed the animals. This was in their little store. Hey, do you hear some music? Listen to this. Well, we're at the Trop Family Lodge. This is the gift shop, and this is a view from the front of it, looking towards Stowe. This is the lodge. It was built where the original one burned in 1980. It's a beautiful lodge. We were told that for 2 decades after the movie The Sound of Music, the most frequent question in Stowe was how to get to the lodge. So eventually Stowe even printed up a map with the directions. Now the Baroness Maria von Trapp died in 1987, and she's buried here on the grounds. Many visitors come up to this Austrian tea room where they have all kinds of little pastries and sandwiches and a beautiful view. Now we're back in Stowe. We're heading up to the ski areas. It's a neat covered bridge. Now the trees were beautiful, but they were not in their full fall color yet. That, of course, is one of the ski runs. This is up at Mount Mansfield. Right at the slope area. Now Stowe is actually an all year round resort area and one of the main attractions for the Vermont area. This is an alpine slide, which is for the daring, I take it.
Well, it's time for intermission. Don't go away. We've got lots more for you. Hooray!